Welcome to a world where dreams hold secrets and shadows conceal truths. 3 strangers, bound by visions of a mysterious portal, are about to embark on a journey that will change their lives forever. On a night when the sky seemed devoid of stars, the forest stretched out like a sea of shifting shadows. The trees, their twisted trunks cloaked in moss, rose like silent sentinels, their branches intertwining to form an oppressive canopy. The breeze that wove through them whispered indistinct sounds like distant voices. At the heart of this darkness, a light pulsed. Hovering mere inches above the ground, a perfect circle of silver energy shimmered, radiating a strange yet comforting warmth. It did not illuminate the forest but absorbed the surrounding shadows like an inverted beacon. From this light came murmurs, soft, indecipherable, yet charged with an unmistakable urgency. Then movement. A hooded figure emerged from the darkness. Its steps were slow, almost hesitant. It stopped a few paces from the circle, raised a trembling hand, and murmured in an ancient tongue. Its voice mingled with the surrounding whispers like a wave crashing upon a shore. "You must come, before it's too late." Suddenly the tree's branches quivered, and a massive shadow formed behind the figure. Slowly the figure turned, its eyes gleaming like twin shards of silver in the darkness. The shadow lunged. A blinding light burst from the portal, shattering the forest's silence with a deafening roar. The figure screamed, and then everything fell into nothingness. Clara jolted awake, her breath quick, her sheets clinging to her damp skin. Instinctively, she grabbed her phone from the bedside table and checked the time. 3:33. She ran a trembling hand through her tangled hair and stared at the ceiling. That dream again. But this time, it felt stronger. Her fingers brushed against the sketchbook lying beside her. Without thinking, she opened it to a blank page and began to draw. Her hands shook, but the pencil seemed guided by an unseen force. Minutes later, she stopped and gazed at what she had drawn. A portal, identical to the one from her dream, surrounded by a dense forest. But this time, there was something more. A hooded figure, faint and almost erased, and an amorphous shadow moving behind it. A chill ran down her spine. She stared at the drawing, searching for meaning. Her mother had always told her she had an overactive imagination, but Clara knew this was different. This dream, this portal, they were real in a way she couldn't yet understand. She closed the sketchbook, lay back down, and tried to calm her racing mind. But that night, sleep eluded her entirely. In a dimly lit school laboratory, Elias was hunched over an experiment, his slender hands carefully adjusting a complex setup of wires and electrodes. The dark circles under his eyes betrayed yet another sleepless night. The silence in the lab was broken only by the faint hum of his device and the occasional clatter of a pen falling onto the table. He was alone, as he often was. Solitude didn't bother him. Not really. It gave him time to think, to analyze, and most importantly to escape the growing unease that gnawed at him. He placed a hand on his forehead as images from last night's dream resurfaced with terrifying clarity. The forest, the portal, and that shadow. A creak sounded behind him. Elias jolted, his heart pounding. He spun around abruptly. "Still working on your secret project, Einstein?" The voice of his classmate Sophie filled the room. She was clutching a stack of notebooks to her chest, her amused smile softening the playful jab. "Sophie, you scared me," Elias stammered, trying to mask his unease. "Sorry," she said, setting her notebooks down on a nearby table. She approached his setup, frowning as she inspected it. Seriously, what are you building?" Elias hesitated, searching for a rational answer, but the words slipped out before he could stop them. "Have you ever dreamed of something strange? A forest, maybe? A glowing circle?" Sophie tilted her head, intrigued. "Number why?" Elias averted his eyes, uncomfortable. He shrugged. "It's nothing. Forget it." But Sophie wasn't letting it go. "Wait, why are you asking? Are you saying you dreamed about that?" Elias remained silent, his gaze fixed on the whiteboard behind her. Something had been added to his diagrams while his back was turned. A perfect circle surrounded by jagged lines. His eyes widened. Who drew that?" he whispered. Sophie frowned and turned to look. She squinted, studying the drawing. "That wasn't there before," she said softly. A cold shiver ran down Elias's spine. Across the city, Sophia, a journalist, was buried in a sea of notes scattered across a table in a crowded cafe. Her open notebook lay before her as she read an article about a string of mysterious disappearances linked to sleep disturbances. A waiter passed by with a tray of steaming cups. "Another cup, miss?" he asked politely. Sophia glanced up, slightly annoyed at the interruption, but nodded. "Yes, thank you," she replied distractedly before turning back to her article. One testimony caught her attention. A man claimed to have dreamed of a glowing portal in a forest shortly before falling into an inexplicable days-long sleep. She reread the words, her fingers nervously toying with her pen. A glowing portal. A forest. She closed her eyes for a moment. The description struck a deep chord within her. Sophia had seen the same thing, again and again, every night for the past week. Forcing herself to focus, she flipped through her notebook, where she had sketched images from her dreams. A glowing circle surrounded by jagged lines, identical to what the witness had described. The steaming cup of coffee arrived in front of her, but Sophia didn't move. Something in the air had shifted. She felt a cold breeze on the back of her neck, though no windows were open in the cafe. She turned abruptly, her gaze scanning the room. The other patrons were engrossed in their conversations. No one seemed to have noticed anything unusual. But she had heard a whisper, so faint it was almost imperceptible. "Come, it's time." Sophia quickly closed her notebook and stood, her heart racing. She left the cafe without even touching her coffee. As Sophia walked down the street, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out, hoping for a call from her editor. But the screen displayed a message she didn't understand. It was from an unknown number, and the words appeared to be written in a language she had never seen. Yet inexplicably she understood their meaning. "The portal is calling." Gather. Clara wandered through the city streets, clutching her sketchbook tightly against her chest. She needed answers. The images from her dreams, the whispers, the shadow in the forest. Everything was becoming too real. Then she remembered an event she'd seen advertised at the gallery, a conference on dream phenomena. Perhaps she could find some clarity there. The conference room was modest, bathed in a soft yellow light that enhanced its cozy atmosphere. About 20 people were already seated, and Clara nervously took a spot in the back. Next to her, a young man with a sharp face was furiously sketching in a notebook. His movements were rapid, almost frantic, as if he were trying to capture something before it vanished. Clara glanced discreetly at his notebook, and her heart skipped a beat. The symbol. It was the exact same one she'd been drawing. A circle surrounded by jagged lines. Without hesitation, she leaned closer. "Excuse me," she murmured softly. The young man looked up, startled, His glasses slipped slightly down his nose, and he pushed them back up with a clumsy gesture. "Yes?" Clara pointed at his notebook. "That drawing. Where did you see it?" He hesitated, his expression hardening slightly. "Why are you asking?" Clara opened her own sketchbook and placed it on her lap. Flipping quickly through the pages, she landed on one of her drawings of the portal. "Because I've seen it too," she whispered, her words barely audible. The boy froze, his gaze darting between her and the sketch. Then he straightened slightly, his wariness giving way to curiosity. "I'm Elias." Clara nodded. "I'm Clara." At that moment, another voice interrupted them. "Excuse me, but are you talking about this symbol?" Clara and Elias turned their heads. A poised young woman with neatly tied hair was holding her phone out. On the screen was a glowing image of the portal. "You too?" Elias breathed, almost in disbelief. Sophia nodded and sat down beside them, crossing her arms. "I've been researching collective dreams, and I thought it was just a coincidence. But I don't believe in coincidences anymore." The three of them exchanged glances, the air between them heavy with tension. "What if it's not just dreams?" Clara murmured. Elias clenched his fists as if trying to suppress a truth he dared not speak aloud. Sophia observed them for a moment before asking bluntly, "How long have you been dreaming about this?" Clara thought for a moment. "A week, maybe 2. What about you?" 2 weeks, Elias replied. Sophia nodded slowly. 3 for me. It started just before I came across stories of these disappearances. Witnesses described the same portal. Do you know what that means? Clara's stomach tightened. That we're connected to all of this. As they spoke in hushed voices, a presence loomed behind them. An elderly woman, dressed in a black coat and leaning on a cane, had approached silently. Her piercing eyes examined each of them, as though she could read their thoughts. "You are the chosen ones," she declared in a raspy yet firm voice. Clara frowned. "Excuse me?" The old woman stepped closer, ignoring the curious glances from other attendees. "You've seen the portal, haven't you? You've heard its call." Elias opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. "Who are you?" Sophia demanded, sitting upright, her tone edged with suspicion. The woman offered a mysterious smile. "Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is what you must do." She raised a trembling hand and pointed to their right hands. "Look." All 3 of them lowered their gaze to their hands and saw for the first time the same subtle mark etched into their skin, a perfect circle, faint as a healed burn scar. Clara's breath caught. "What is this?" The woman stepped back slowly, her enigmatic smile never faltering. "It's the Keeper's seal. You have been chosen. But hurry, time is running out." Before they could ask more questions, she disappeared into the crowd, vanishing as though she had never been there. Their conversation was interrupted by a flickering light overhead. The bulbs buzzed and dimmed, and an icy breeze swept through the room, though no windows were open. Clara shivered, rubbing her arms. "What's happening?" A soft, almost imperceptible voice echoed in their minds. "Find the portal, before it's too late." They exchanged a glance, the tension palpable. Without speaking, they knew their lives had just taken an irreversible turn. The moon was hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds, plunging the city into an oppressive darkness. In their homes, Clara, Elias, and Sophia all felt the same thing, a tension in the air, as if something unseen was watching them. Clara sat on her bed, her sketchbook open before her. She had tried to draw to calm herself, but her hands seemed to move without her control. Sketches of the portal filled the pages, becoming more detailed, almost alive. Suddenly the pencil froze and slipped from her fingers. A strange line appeared on the paper, as though the page itself was tearing to reveal something beneath. She pulled back, her eyes wide in shock. A soft, almost soothing voice murmured in the air, "Clara, come." Elias. Elias stared at his whiteboard. The symbol he had drawn earlier had become more intricate, as if it had evolved on its own. Faint yet insistent whispers seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. He picked up his phone, hoping to distract himself, but the screen lit up on its own, displaying a message. "You are ready?" He frowned, his heart pounding. That couldn't be possible. He set the phone down, but a sudden vibration filled the room. The glass of water on his desk trembled slightly. A cold breeze swept through, rustling the papers pinned to his wall. Elias glanced around, trembling. He knew this night would be different. Sophia. Sophia sat at her desk, rereading her notes on the disappearances linked to dreams. Her notebook was filled with details she had gathered over the weeks. But tonight, the words seemed blurry, almost shifting on the page. She rested her head in her hands, exhausted, but no sooner had her eyes closed than she felt a presence behind her. She spun around abruptly. Nothing. Her phone vibrated on the table. The message was from the same unknown number she had seen after the conference. "It's time." She gripped the phone tightly, a cold fear washing over her. That night, all three fell into a deep, almost imposed sleep. Their breathing slowed, and their minds were pulled into another realm. They awoke in a luminous clearing surrounded by a dense forest. The air was strangely cold, and every breath formed small white clouds. Clara was the first to speak. Where are we?" Elias, still groggy, sat up and looked around. It's the forest from our dreams. Sophia, ever pragmatic, touched the ground. The grass was soft but frozen. She stood slowly. "This isn't a dream," she said gravely. "It's something else." A few meters away, the portal pulsed gently. The silvery light it emitted seemed alive, almost inviting. But another presence was unmistakable. The shadows of the trees shifted, distorted as though they had a will of their own. "You're finally here," said a familiar voice. The silhouette of the old woman emerged from the darkness, but this time she wasn't alone. A gentle light emanated from her, and she held a staff adorned with engraved symbols. "This is where it all begins," she said, her eyes shining like stars. Elias stepped forward, cautious. "Who are you really? Why us?" The woman smiled enigmatically. "I am the keeper of dreams, or what remains of her. You were chosen because you carry an ancient connection to this world." Clara moved closer, her voice trembling. "But why? Why bring us here?" The woman planted her staff into the ground, and the portal responded, glowing more intensely. "Because the world of dreams is in danger. A shadow is awakening, devouring dreams and plunging those it touches into eternal sleep. If it isn't stopped, it will destroy the balance between our worlds." As she spoke, a deep growl echoed through the forest, shaking the ground. The shadows around them thickened, merging into a shifting, amorphous mass. Sophia instinctively stepped back. "What is that?" The keeper gripped her staff tightly. "The shadow. It knows you're here. You must hurry. The portal is your only chance." The shadows drew closer, their whispers turning to shrieks. Elias grabbed Clara's arm, while Sophia picked up a fallen branch as an improvised weapon. "Run!" the keeper shouted. The portal flickered, as though it might vanish at any moment. Without thinking, they sprinted toward the light. Clara was the first to cross the threshold, followed by Elias. Sophia hesitated for a moment, casting one last glance at the keeper. "Go. I'll hold them off," the keeper murmured. Sophia dove into the light, and everything went black. Total silence enveloped them. Then a deep yet gentle voice echoed in the darkness. "Welcome, chosen ones. The journey has only just begun. See you in the next episode as our thrilling adventure continues. Don't miss it."